Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to some of our participants in our today's webinar. A warm welcome to each and every one of you in our today's webinar session. This has been a joint initiative between YASH, SAP, and Saltius. So today we will try to decode the net zero part on sustainability. So let me start with a quick round of panelist introduction. So this is Guna here, myself, and I work as the solution advisor for sustainability for Asia Pacific. And I have overall 14 years of experience. And I have my esteemed colleague Anita Vashne, who is the global VP for sustainability, and Yogesh, who is the global head for EHS and sustainability at YASH, and Arun Bhaskaran, who is our other panelist here, who is the solution architect for EHS and sustainability at YASH. So I'd like to have a quick round of panelist introduction. Anita, can you go first?
Thank you so much, Guna, for inviting me to the webinar. Hello, everyone. As Guna mentioned, I am leading SAP as4 sustainability strategy for products at SAP. And in my role, I work closely with customers who are embarking on their sustainability ambitions. I look forward to sharing some of the latest updates on our roadmap with the audiences today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Yogesh, can you follow through?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Yogesh Nagpal. I'm associated with YASH Technologies for past 15 years. Overall, 20 years of experience in the product compliance, health and safety, environmental compliance, and sustainability. I do lead the HSC and sustainability line of business at YASH Technologies, currently based out of Chicago, and looking forward for this wonderful session with you, with an eminent panelist and you wonderful audience today.
Arun, can you please go on?
Sure. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and I'm equally excited to join this webinar today. Myself, Arun Bhaskar, associated with YASH for last 7 years. Overall experience around 13 years on the SAP EHS platform. Worked across multiple geographies in various industry verticals, and heading this health and safety practice, especially on the solution architect for the sustainability platform. I'm equally excited for this today's session and meeting you all together in this session. Thank you.
Excellent. Let me start with a saying today. So I always been a fan of the saying, which goes by the words, we always inherit the earth, not from our ancestors, rather we borrow it from our children. This very much sets the tone for our webinar today. And we all know that climate change is happening and it is quite real, and there are various data points to prove that. The latest on that being the IPCC panel report, which addresses the 1.5 degrees Celsius criticality and focuses on why we are moving towards the net zero path. So we know that with the current rate, if we are not going to have emission targets clearly laid out, the Earth will be 2.4 degrees Celsius warmer by the end of the century. And that's why we are all here today in this session, trying to address what difference we can make together in order to meet some of these targets and mitigate a little bit on what we can do for the climate change adversity. So now we can see a lot of emission relevant announcements happening across the space based on this IPCC report. And we see corporations, we see regulatory bodies, we see governments committing to the net zero targets. Prima facie being, most of these being the laid out tombstone of having halving the emissions by 2040 and reaching a residual net zero until 2050. So of late, the latest one has been the SEC mandate, where they have mandatorily requested for disclosures from various US organizations to make it public on their GHG emissions. Similarly, we see in latest news that there are different corporations that are committing to this net zero targets. So recently we had Costa Coffee committing to halving the emissions by 2040, and we saw Petronas committing latestly in Indonesia for halving the emissions by 2050, reaching the net zero by 2050. So even in Indian space, we have a lot of industries following suit. We have Reliance, we have HDFC Bank, we have Adani, we have JSW, we have even Indian Railways, which is a public sector, which has committed to this net zero target. Although we have a widespread time frame on this, we all have committed, in one or other way from different corporations across the globe and across geographies for this net zero target. So we do understand that this net zero is a complex and a challenging topic for every organization. So let me put it in simpler terms, what we are aiming at NetZero here first. So NetZero basically is nothing but balancing the emissions, GHG emissions that we emit with the GHG emissions that we remove from the atmosphere. So in this process, there would be a significant amount of planning, resources, and time that will be required from every organization. And we need to start looking at reducing emissions by reducing the wastage across time, raw materials, resources, and energy for any given organization. So in our CEO words, it's like how we can make sustainability profitable and profitability sustainable. To embark corporations in this journey, there is a need that we all need to have a clear framework for every given organization. And this framework should have following aspects that needs to be captured. First and foremost, you need to have a clearly defined short-term and long-term goal. So the common norm goes by halving the emissions by 2040 and reaching residual net zero by 2050. And the next crucial action here is to commit these targets. And then we need to start with deep diving on the decarbonizing of each value chain. So deep cuts on GHG emissions across value chains is the most scientifically proven way to bring down the company's net zero targets by 2050. The third step lies in terms of communicating these targets across various stakeholders and finally reporting the progress against these targets from time to time through public disclosures and statutory reporting. So in order to help organizations walk through this journey, we have a clearly laid out strategy and solution roadmap. And I would like to call next Anita to walk through this solution and strategy roadmap. And before that, let me also set the tone for this webinar's agenda. So primarily, as part of the next discussion, we would have Anita explaining our roadmap and strategy as a company to meet organization sustainability goals. Then we have a quick on-look on the solution environment management, which is an accelerator package that YASH has come up with in order to help you reach out these goals, and what are the key solution highlights and value differentiators that we have. And then we would follow this with a demo and Q&A session. So that would be the high-level agenda for today's webinar. Now I'd like to call upon Anita to walk us through the strategy and roadmap for sustainability.
Thank you, Guna, for the introduction to the agenda, and I will briefly share my screen. If Guna, you unshare, I can share my screen. Thank you. So as Guna briefly introduced us that, this topic is very important to us at SAP. And of course, as our customers are taking on these goals much more seriously, it is for us very important that we help them on this journey, right? So of course, being an intelligent enterprise is one thing, but then how do you actually use the power of your supply chains, whether it's upstream or downstream, to build a sustainable world? And that's where we bring together the different portfolio of products that we have for our customers. And that stems from the idea of our own journey, which has been more than 10 years on how we are walking the talk in being sustainable on our own operations. And that's where SAP as an enabler, we can take this journey forward with our customers. So we have learned over the years, right, where is it that we can create this maximum impact together with our customers? And where is it that SAP systems can really have that data transparency for you as customers to go forward on your sustainability ambitions? So today's focus, of course, is on climate action. That means how can you measure, manage, and mitigate your emissions across your value chain? But beyond that, we are already working with our customers when we look at plastic taxes and how EPR schemes are coming in, which impose CPG companies, especially to package the items better, have the go out and play that role of the extended producer responsibility. Social responsibility is another hot topic because, as we can see, COVID has uncovered that not only we are responsible for our own employees, but also looking at the communities which are the part of our entire end-to-end value chain. Now, all these regulations can only be answered to if you have this transparency in your company's operations and how do you perform. And that's where with holistic steering and reporting, we bring this clear ESG picture to you as a customer so that you can advance on your goals while having a look on where you need to drive those changes. Is it at a country level? Is it in a business unit? Where do you exactly need to do this, and do so on a continuous basis? So going a little bit deeper on what is the portfolio, right? Of course, we have existing products like the EHS for many years now, which have been helping our customers on being compliant in the countries that they operate in. But now you can look around that how these increasing pressure that we have from the regulators, that the emissions, not only at the corporate level, but you also need to look at a product level across your scope 1, 2, and 3. And how do you engage your suppliers? And that's where we have the product footprint management that we bring together with other capabilities that we have. As I mentioned on the circular economy side, right? Responsible design and production, product compliance are two other products which help our customers to move to circular models as early as possible. Similarly, we have EHS, which is also looking at the social responsibility piece when it looks into the health and the compliance topics at the employees level. So of course, we have existing portfolio, but we will continue to innovate on cloud because that's where we can continuously drive these innovations as we get more clarity from our customer requirements, we get more guidance from the government and the policymakers, but you as customers can increasingly embed sustainability in your end-to-end business processes. So today, the focus, as I said, is on climate. And here for the session today, we are focusing on number 1 and 2. That means, A, how do you get your numbers right? How do you do this on a continuous basis, whether this is at a product level or at a corporate level? But then you start to look at the impact so that you're not only creating no new emissions, but instead reducing them over, these sustainability targets that you have set for yourself. So that's where reporting and mitigation are a top priority for our customers. And as Gunnar mentioned, with SEC now also finally following what TCFD asks for, it seems like, uniformly, no matter where companies operate or have their plants located, they would have to get this transparency on scope 1, 2, and 3. We would not go into the details today, but things like carbon offsets, looking at carbon credits and the different markets, and ultimately, how can you make your business resilient and long-term? It's an important part of how you look at your climate ambitions. So, of course, as we look, some of the immediate words coming from our customers are that how do I break down this scope 1, 2, and 3? Where do I get the categories? Which categories are important to me? Am I looking at all 15 categories? So such kind of conversations really help us understand that where customers are becoming serious, where do they have the data quality to actually drive the change? And that's why product footprint management, which was released last year, helps customers to start on this product journey where you can really see as products move from raw materials to finished goods, how can you track and bring these emissions down? And of course, expanding upstream, that means what happens when you start to meaningfully engage with your suppliers. The same way, the way you have this meaningful engagement on an emissions level, you want to bring that picture together because your company, when you set your climate targets, is a consolidation of the activities that you do within your enterprise, that within your span of control, but also what you do upstream and downstream with the different supply chain actors. And that's where with Sustainability Control Tower, we bring these different elements of picture together. So of course, here you can see what I have highlighted is the World Economic Forum, where they have two highlighted KPIs, where what is your overall GHG emissions? And of course, today we will talk about EHS in a broader way, not only in emissions management, but other topics as well. But this is how the sustainability KPIs are brought together as one true unique picture to the sustainability managers out there, or the procurement guys who want to make a better decision, or those who are at the plant level want to bring their emissions down by systematically putting steps in place. So Sustainability Control Tower is also on business technology platform, but it brings together this picture for our customers. Now, Before I hand it over, of course, to our colleagues from YASH, it goes without saying that this cannot happen in silos. That means we are not looking to have this beautiful carbon emissions picture and set in one place. There is no point if you can't use this data to embed this across your end-to-end company's processes. So customers who have different kind of SAP applications, they have different ways of approaching emissions. They might be planning with SAP or doing reporting with other solutions. The idea is that the true picture that we are getting on emissions, whether it's coming from the underlying solutions of EHS or product footprint management, it is able to embed across. So if you look at integrated business planning, if you look at transportation management, all these areas should have the same true emissions picture flowing through, because that's what makes SAP unique. We track data at a granular level where you as business leaders can drive change. So this embedding of sustainability is extremely important to us. And that's how we want to scale this, whether it's across ESG dimensions or across networks, by bringing these capabilities together. So with that, I think I would hand it back to my colleagues at YASH, and then happy to answer if there are any other questions towards the end of the session.
Thank you, Anita. So as we move from this topic to the next topic, which is aligned towards our environment management, I think on your screen you will get a poll question. I would request all of you to please participate and enter your response into the poll. So as Anita has set the stage for the sustainability solutions from SAP, I'm going to take it further and go a little deeper into the GHG emission and the carbon footprint aspect of it. I think the last slide of Anita pretty much said that it is definitely, these programs cannot run in silos. And that's where we are going to see the integrated aspect of a solution. How does it help to capture, monitor, track, and finally report this emission data? Again, not only for the external reporting, but various other purposes. With that, so while a lot is being talked about and about GHG emission, net zero, carbon footprint, a lot of solutions which live into those points, which define my pointed goals, there are still a lot of challenges and pain points from the industry. Some of them are like the data sources are so many. We have been talking about at least 20 different parameters which are very well defined in scope 1, 2, and 3. When I talk about the GRI reporting, it gives me another 18 parameters which need to go in line to capture those details. UNDG guidelines give us another set of parameters which again have to be captured, tracked, monitored, and data has to be aligned. Moreover, a global company has so many sites, so many business units which they would like to collect the data and finally report into one consolidated form. So with these disparate systems which feed the data has to be harmonized, or I would use the word normalized, across the common unit of measures. And finally, we are able so that we can finally track it, run the calculation into the system, and can generate some meaningful report. While as an organization, I'm looking at the global requirements, global regulatory requirements. I also have to have my own goals set for local requirements, and hence both local and global compliance requirements need to be met by those data elements and those calculations which are built into the system. How these emissions are trending over the past, and when I extrapolate this information by to let's say next 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, am I reaching my goals? Because every organization has defined their goal for short-term goals for 2025, 2030, and 2050. So with those reduction which I am currently living, will I be able to meet my goals? Should I be preponing and hence kind of releasing those goals out into the market with my aggressive targets, or should I be taking some adequate measures to increase or kind of say increase my efforts towards those goals. Generating those sustainability reports has always been a tedious task for the organization. I have talked to customers who said that collecting this data and putting it into a format where which can go well into those sustainability reports or annual sustainability charters sometimes take as much as 3 months. And consider that by the time we finish these 3 months and generate the report, it's the time that we should start looking for the next year. So if there is an efficient way of generating these reports, capturing this data and publishing out, that definitely that is something which is of need of the industry. And finally, benchmarking. It is very crucial aspect that what we are doing is aligned to my industry, my NAICS codes, which industry I fall in, with my benchmarking peers, and overall we can countries/industry goals. If my country is going net zero by 2050, as an organization operating into that country, I do have to have my measures and my kind of say goals aligned to my bigger objective, and hence this benchmarking across peers, across network, and across industry helps. So with those challenges and pain points, we are looking at environment management system today, which is a part of a comprehensive environment health and safety solution portfolio. As you say that anybody of you have looked at the sustainability goals from any organization, this encompasses goals from safety, from sustainability, which is more towards environment, from sustainable supply chain, which is sometimes called sustainable procurement, from the legal and policies, from ethics and compliance. But still, if I talk about measurable goals, there are a lot of them are also coming from safety, waste management, environment management, compliances, and that's where this entire suite of solution which you see on the screen can feed that data. If not all, it can cover quite a substantial amount of feed the data. Substantial amount of data can be fed from this module. And today we are going to focus on environment management as a solution. But if you see that this platform, this landscape covers a whole lot more. So in our subsequent journeys and in our subsequent roadmap, we can always look to expand this solution beyond just environment and emission, which we are talking today. So the entire, I'll call it as the block diagram or process flow diagram, has been built based upon what a person from the industry would actually do when they have their goals and when they have to capture the data. The first step is data collection, and data collection from all different possible ways. While the data can be entered manually for the data which we capture on a monthly basis, let's say utility bills or some kind of like the invoices which get generated on a timely basis, the system also has the capability to capture this data electronically with the real-time integration from SCADA PLCs or sometimes from the third-party integration where the open API is there, and the data can be read real-time. There's always an option of bulk loading this data into the system, and we will see some of these capabilities in the demo, so that if you have a daily capture of a data endpoint or a monthly report of let's say your hazardous waste, the disposer is giving you an yearly summary of the report, the data can be loaded all together at once by leveraging or by utilizing that data load file. So those kind of data load file templates are available from the system, which can be leveraged. The idea is to simplify this massive data collection exercise as much as possible. Do it manually, do it through the bulk load, interface if this data is coming on a regular basis, on a timely basis. If I talk about my SOx emissions and let's say carbon monoxide emission, I would rather map it with the stack monitor or with the emission towers, with the reason so that I can have a regular real-time data feed from those monitors. The next step is that with those so-called multiple data sources feeding the data into my data lake, now I have to aggregate the data. So when I say that fuel being used at 7 of my business unit within the plant, how do I calculate and amalgamate this data into a format and bring it together into a harmonized unit? In some countries, we use gallons. In the other countries, we use liters. How will I make this unit normal or common all across, so that now when I use the calculation to multiply it with an emission factor, it is able to give me a corresponding carbon figure. So converting the data into a common or kind of as a common baseline or the singular unit of measure is something which we do at an aggregation end. The peaks and valleys, we probably can avoid those. We can normalize it automatically, average it out, or if we see an exceptional peak, the system can help you take appropriate action by creating, again, a request for relooking at the data, or probably nullifying and avoiding that data so that the data can be captured again. Next thing is about calculation. Again, think my scenario goes back to a global organization which is operating into multiple countries. So again, the emission factor varies. If I'm using a hydropower versus a coal power or electricity and a solar power, how much of natural gas is being used against against my so-called diesel or fuel, which is used to run my DG sets, the emission factor varies by country as well. So how these different factors are captured, the system has inbuilt calculation based upon EPA and the GHG guidelines, and hence can give me a corresponding amount as soon as I enter the value. So I just have to enter my monthly consumption of electricity and the type of electricity which I use to get the corresponding carbon footprint. That's what is the expected outcome. Finally, a lot of reports are being generated from the system. Sample of these reports are also shown here to ensure that what is the outcome of the system. When we do a lot of this exercise, the idea is to be on top of what is happening, where will it lead me to, and finally at the end, the goals which I have set, will it lead me there, or I need to take some adequate some more actions there. And that's where this information is available to external stakeholders, to my internal leadership team, and visibility to, again, the stakeholders both at the ground level who are doing the job as well as the people who are managing it. Now, when I talk about the standard solution itself has matured over a period of time. It brings all this data collection measures, the environment management parameters, multiple parameters about emissions are already captured into the system. The system has a framework where it can handle the environmental limits and exceedance, which means that if the value goes beyond a certain value, what the system should behave in this way. It should trigger a notification to a person. And sometimes it becomes quite critical. Consider that you are at the end of the month and your permit allows you to have the emissions at a certain limit. But in the last 4 days of time, your limit is always exceeding. So I think if system is able to give me those triggers to the right authorities and decision maker in the operations, that this kind of deviation will lead me to a kind of going beyond my permit and hence being non-compliant by end of the month. I think that's what we all want system and technology to help with. And when talk about environment management, brings those kind of features and functionality within. Investigation, root cause analysis, defining the right corrective action, preventive action is an integral part of the system. But beyond this, together with SAP, we have enhanced the scope of this environment management solution, and that's what we are talking about today in EM+. This solution, we have configured more scenarios. The idea is that if you were capturing emissions, within EM+, now there are more scenarios for different types of energy consumption patterns. So you can capture the natural gas, which is being used, electricity, which you are purchasing, or being generated at your site, water discharges, waste, which is being generated at your site. Some of those scenarios have been created in the system. Now, SAP has the complete suite of solutions around waste management, transportation management, your travel and expense management, which actually are meant to do these functions. But from a reporting perspective, if I'm only looking at capturing my hazardous waste quantities, which is going to landfill, I may take a step-by-step approach rather than going into a detailed integrated waste management solution. I can take a step back and I can leverage this framework to capture the values or the quantities of the waste and hence map to my goals of 10%, 7%, 5% waste minimization to landfill, which I have defined into my sustainability goals. And so on. This list continues. As we talk, the more and more scenarios are being built to cover as much of as possible within this framework and give you a singular platform which you can leverage to generate any kind of emission reports for any of these statutory bodies or regulatory authorities. Data load templates have been made more aligned to the day-to-day business requirement. We have the emission calculators and unit conversions calculator placed in screens, so you can put the unit into any quantities and it will automatically convert you for a singular quantity which you choose, be it gallon or liter, be it pounds or kilograms. In tonnage, those can be defined. A lot of dashboards, meaningful insights, all at plant level, business unit level, at a country level, and then at organization levels are created into the system to give you a viewpoint. The idea is to reduce the cycle of time in which we come and ask what you need, and rather learn from the best practices what many more mature organizations are following, and bring you those best practices to yourself, and hence reduce the overall time to turn around this project. And in IT word, time is equivalent to money. So when we reduce the time, definitely the cost reduces, complexity reduces, and we are moving towards a system which is less risk prone, because you're not the only one who is doing it for the first time. This has been done, proven somewhere else, and we are leveraging those best practices to bring it to yourself. These are some of the examples which we have taken. Again, as I said, the list is ever growing. We have more scenarios already created in the system, but in a nutshell, if you have seen, many point solutions cover and address your requirements around emissions. So all my SOx emissions, nitrogen dioxide emissions, sulfur dioxide emissions, or carbon monoxide emissions, there are scenarios available for your emission parameters. But now we are leveraging the same skeleton. And that all over here, I think I would like to highlight the power of scalability within SAP ecosystem, that from one to another, starting with emission, we can expand the scope the way we have done it from energy, water, and waste. Now we're talking about the transportation, or we're talking about the employee commutation. So all those things can be enhanced, scaled as we grow along. Electricity purchase or generated, there are multiple different scenarios. Water consumption, groundwater consumption. I think we are also talking about many organizations have defined their goals towards the net water targets to zero, which means the water taken out from the ground will be recycled in an appropriate way to get that zero impact on that water level. So those kind of goals can be managed and can be tracked by having the appropriate data being captured for this water consumption patterns and water discharges which we are reusing. Again, on the hazardous waste size, as I mentioned earlier as well, this is one of the critical element of as a sustainability goal for many organizations, that how much of the waste which we are generating is hazardous versus non-hazardous. How much of this waste is actually going to landfill, and what is my reduction plan? How I'm going to reduce this waste to landfill over next couple of years, and finally bring it to a stage where I become more sustainable. And the waste which is being recycled, the quantity has to grow up. So the percentage increase in the recycled waste and the decrease in the waste to landfill is something which are the measures which can be tracked from those scenarios which we have built into the system as of now. Today, the whole world is talking about cloud. So the SAP system also are completely aligned to the customer's ask, or we call it as my business requirements. So the systems are available on private cloud edition, public cloud edition as a SaaS model. Now, many of you, if you are not on SAP, not on the latest version of S4, and they are still planning to go on S4, the system can be run in a sidecar approach. It means that we still give you the latest and greatest of S4 running at parallel while you make your move towards S4 with your core ERP. So it means there will be two different systems, but they will be completely integrated, talking to each other. All the location in your ECC system will be mapped in S4 and will still give you the outcome. So what we are trying to say over here is that you don't really have to wait till the time you come on S4. All the latest solution on environment management, the mobile capabilities which SAP provides can be leveraged in the sidecar approach as well. And again, this is not theoretical. This has been done, tested, and being running scenarios at a couple of instances. And we can always, and Anita showed us the roadmap of the list of solutions which drive my overall performance towards sustainability or drive towards sustainability. So we can always start something with a starter package, which will primarily give me what we talked about in the scope in the previous slide with the S4 basic edition and environment management and analytics solution. But we can always have integration to third-party integration or corrective action root causes being done through incident management, product footprint, which pretty much gives me the impact of my product in the overall life cycle from cradle to grave, transportation management for the distribution and transportation of my goods, integrated waste management. If I wanted to track the overall waste being generated, transported, disposed, and finally waste manifest being generated and reported to the EPA or the Environmental Protection Agency or the regulatory waste authorities in the country or in the region. And all this data finally feeding to that control tower, because that's where is the hub of all my information. We only, again, in the last 15 minutes, we only talked about one segment of data. Similarly, there'll be data coming on the safety parameters. The data will be coming on the financial aspect. The data will be coming on the governance aspect. And all this data are being kind of consolidated into the sustainability control tower. And that becomes your single house of reporting for your sustainability goals, sustainability reporting and parameters. We talked about this solution and EM Plus today. While we talk, we are already in discussions and I think in the advanced stages of discussion with SAP in building a package solution around sustainability control tower like this. And possibly in one of our next demonstration, we'll talk about what those things bring into for yourself in the time to come. Now, the benefits of the package solution. I think the first benefit which anybody who expect out of this solution is that with this package solution, a lot of these things should come standard, should come pre-built in, and that's what I think we are able to do here. So we reduce the overall time to get going in this, and as the overall time for deployment or ready to go is 12 weeks. So we start the project, to prepare phase, we try to get the requirements, again, requirements which is very specific to your organization, your company structures, where do you operate. And then those 6 weeks of time is good enough for me to bring the package, deploy it at your end, test it at your end, finally run through with some master data and the data which you load into the system, and then you are ready to go in week 11 itself. With a week of support within, I think, less than 90 days is the target where we can keep you going. The whole theme is that we define what we want to do. We bring the pre-cooked or pre-built scope to yourself. We have tried and tested it beforehand so that we have minimum surprises, and we use the word risk into the project. We avoid having any risk or surprises in the project. And finally, the cost is something which should be getting kind of controlled, and we define something which is more scalable, more predictable, again, in the given time frame. The benefits, if I have to summarize that why we should be looking at an EM package solution than the EM solution, I'll say that I think the previous slide itself defines the core benefits, but if I still have to put together, one, it gives you a quick start, because we bring in these scenarios, we bring in the synergies from the partners, from the customers with whom we have worked and built this package solution, and it is available to yourself as a ready to use solution. So 6 to 8 weeks time, which we're talking about changes, is primarily to make it aligned to your organization, defining those roles, aligning it within their ecosystem and get going. Regulatory reporting requirements, ensuring that we generate the reports what makes sense for yourself. And finally, those compliance calculation and all these regulations are pre-built in. At the end, I will say that I'm sure that you all are excited to look at the demo part of the solution, which we are immediately getting into after this slide. I'll say that while it brings the power of scalability, the core I think theme behind this solution is get started fast. When you get started on any journey faster, definitely the overall the progression or the approach toward the project will lead you towards success, because you are on the journey of progression with something which is based upon the best practices, based upon the guidelines which are being created by the industry best principles, and overall brings in the whole lot of data and the experience into that into the overall system. With that, I will invite my colleague Arun Bhaskar, who will take us from into the solution demonstration, talk about some scenarios, how we have built it, and we'll take it from there. Arun, if you're ready, you can take the controls.
Thanks. Sure. Thanks, Yogesh. Thanks for. Let me bring up my screen. Yeah. Hope I'm audible, Yogesh team.
Yes.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Thanks. As you could currently see my screen, this is the latest S/4HANA version of SAP EHS, where we have this environment management module. So currently the screen which you're seeing is the latest S/4HANA 2021 version, where the modules or the tiles have been configured as per the EM requirement. So basically, these are a role-based approach in the environment management, as Yogesh and Anita were discussing. Like this access is given to the shop floor level, to the top level management people. The system has those role-defined access managed control where you can see the styles based on the roles. So currently what you're seeing is a manager level roles where you will have access to certain data, where you can monitor the data on a regular frequency. You can identify the exceedance which are happening in the data. What are those compliance scenarios, parameters that have been configured? What are those deviations that are reported in the system? So this will give a holistic view to a manager to access his, to do his day-to-day operation and to keep his environmental metrics into the track or on track. Similarly, there is a tile or there is a placeholder where the access is given to the normal shop floor or to the shop floor level users, where they are involved in collecting this data from the different sources. Let it be a manual source or they're collecting from different vendors. So this is something especially for those users who are going to collect this data on a periodic frequencies and certain defined frequencies. Okay, so these are the two different aspects of the system. Let's say in the environment management, as we clearly start with the monitor data part. So we have configured various parameters into the system. So as Yogesh and Anita were discussing, like there are parameters that we have configured related to scope 1, scope 2, and some of the parameters that are falling into the part of the scope 3. So you can see that there are certain parameters that we have configured for diesel consumptions and the scope 2 for the electricity consumptions. And we have configured certain parameters that are related to waste and non-hazardous waste or hazardous waste kind of a thing. So this is my holistic view, where if you can want to see what are all the parameters we have configured for the location and which is falling into which of the category of the scope. So like as you could see, the scope 1s are there. We have the scope 2 emissions. Okay, and similarly, as a part of this project or as a part of this accelerator project, we have defined some of the parameters for the hazardous and non-hazardous waste as well. So that will help you to calculate the waste related factors, the hazardous waste or the scrap disposal process, the amount of carbon which is emitting due to the scrap or the waste which is generated within your organization, which comes or falls directly into the scope 3 emissions. Okay, so this is a holistic view where you can see how the system can be extendable to have your different parameters configured into the system. Now, when you are talking about the parameters, now we are going to see, like I have my parameters defined. Now, how the data collection is going to happen, what will be the calculated emission values I'll be getting after the data is collected from my different sources, and then how this is getting represented to the different dashboard view. So that will be the overall logical flow, how we'll be seeing it. Okay, so let's say we have some of the parameters at the site. Okay, so let's take some diesel as a parameter. So when you go to one of the parameters, okay, you can see this is one of the scope 1 parameter. The data is captured for certain period of time. So this is again as per your regular the frequencies, how you want or what frequency we want to collect these data parameters. So in the system, you can see that the data is captured for in the last year for the past few months, and the rest of the data you have, and where we need to upload this data, or you have the data into the system which we need to upload it. So with this, SAP gives you different flexibilities. Okay, so different flexibilities that you can manually upload this data, or if you have the data getting from different vendors, or you have this data collected into an Excel format from different sources where you have this data coming from. So SAP gives you a platform to import this data in a mass upload. So let us look at the data, like let's say we'll do a mass upload feature where we'll try to holistically take this data into the from the Excel file. Okay, so we have a mass file. Okay, let me just open this. So this is a platform where I have collected my data from different sources. It is all there for the remaining months, which is there in the system. And I import this data into the system. So as soon as I import the data, okay, you can see that for the remaining months, the data has been populated into the system. Okay, so there is an easy available template where you can pull in the data and import it into the system. So now you can see the data is populated for various other months. Now you can see the trend, how the data is being looking into the system. Now here, the data which is coming from various sensors or your SCADA system or from your vendors, there are chances that due to certain factors, this data might have some discrepancy. So SAP gives you a platform or a feature where you can either approve the data. If there is any issue with the data, you can replace the value. If there is something, let's say this 45 is a value which is not a realistic value, which is not within my limits, or it is something which is over exceeding, we can invalidate the data. Or certain cases where you feel that this is something beyond my range, due to some issues, this is gone into an exceedance. In such cases, we can create a deviation. Let me create and show you for certain data. Okay, so let's say this is some of one of the data which is not a valid data. Okay, this has gone into an exceedance. So I will create a deviation for it. Okay, I'll tell that this is an exceeding data. Okay, exceedance. So I will ask someone from site to investigate it, that why it got into an exceedance. Okay, so I given a description and I assign it and I create a deviation. As soon as you create a deviation, the notification process will be sent to the persons who are assigned for this location. So people have been identified for each of these location, who are going to be the environmental managers, who are going to be the investigation leads. So those particular responsible people will start receiving the notification that why there is an exceedance in this particular data. Let's say if there is a data where I have a value, but it is not a realistic value, this is something I need to re-look into it. In such cases, I can invalidate the data. I can tell that this is it's not valid. So I can ask my team to just recheck the system or recheck the sensors and whether this is a valid data or not. Okay, so in that cases, when you invalidate it, the data actually goes to that particular person and he can recalculate or bring in the data into the system. Some of the cases, if you feel that this is not a correct data, your system uses a feature to replace it or approve it. Those all features can be done into the system. So this is how you can do the data validation, data correction part, wherever data is coming to you. It is not a manual job where you have to do one by one. System also gives you the flexibility to do all this together in a one shot. Let's say all this data is there in a tabular view, as you see. Either you can approve it or replace it for certain data wherever you find it is not logical. And you can try to do this in a one shot in this particular screen. And this is a graphical representation where you can see all this data into a view of a trend analysis. Let me show you, like now, since how the data collection part is done, you can also see that how this data can be taken in a manual approach. So SAP has to give you an approach where the data collection options are there for your users who can view this data on their regular frequency. They'll be getting the notification. This is some of the parameters where they will be knowing that how much data is pending for them, for which month, and for what frequency it is pending. So we can go into any one of the parameter. Let's say I'll go into the same diesel parameter and I can edit it. So this is a placeholder where I can manually enter the data for this particular parameter and submit it into the system. Okay, so this is one of the manual approach where you can do it. Even here, SAP is giving you an option for the data collectors, where if you have the parameter, even here you can import the data into the mass upload feature. Similarly, what we have done in the other type. Okay. So with this approach, the data which is coming onto your screen, it's getting collected from different sources, can be put into the system. Now, the main objective of this system is that you have collected the data from different sources. How are you going to get the calculated value out of it? How will you know the carbon emission rate, the NOx rate, the SOx rate? How the data which you collected is giving you the equivalent emission factors. So for that factors, we have again different parameters. So I will show you one of the parameters. Okay. So let's look into this. Same for the diesel consumption, what we have seen. We are seeing the output value. So what you're seeing here is the calculated value. This is nothing but the carbon emission rate. You can see the activity. This is the equal carbon emission rate for the diesel consumption which you have used. So the values which you see here, these are coming based on certain calculations or equations. I could see there were some questions on the limits, how can we define it. So those things can be configured as per the business, as per the industry requirement. Even these calculations and equations can be changing, because the same calculation will not be there for cement industry, or same will not be there for the other manufacturing industry. So the calculation factor also will be changing. So as per that, the calculation equations can be set and you can get this emission factor. Now, if you look at this, how I'm getting this emission factor from my calculated data, system has a feasibility where we are setting up this calculation in the system. Now, as a package, these things are pre-built into a package. So when we say that these calculations are there, you can see that there is a formula and equation we have set. And this can be, this data is coming from different like regulatory parameters. So here, since we are talking about the GHG parameter, so the certain factors related to the diesel consumption factors, the value related to the diesel fuel consumption factors, those values are coming from as per my GHG protocol. So you can see certain values are coming from the regulatory body itself, which I'm using for this particular calculations. So based on this factors, we are able to come up to that calculation level, or I'm able to get the equivalent emission factors of my carbon. Okay. So that is what you are seeing into the particular screen of the overall carbon emission rate. So this is the value which you saw based on the calculation which was happening at my background. Okay. So with this data, you can populate this data into different analytical ways also, where you can take this to a different analytical platform. For like in SAP, we have SAP Analytics Cloud, or to any of your analytical platform. This data can be integrated with your analytic platform, and this will give you an equal representation view of how your environmental parameters, or how is your performance on the different environmental factors. As I'm working in the Middle East region, we are doing these factors for certain organization where we are trying to integrate their daily air quality monitoring system to the government regulators. So you know that this data has to go to the government regulatory bodies. We are collecting those data from the different sensors. So there is mobile sensor, there are stationary sensors. We collect the data. There are APIs where SAP is giving, you can interface that into the SAP system. And then we calculate this carbon emission or the different parameter rate. And from the SAP system, we transfer the data to the government regulatory bodies. So the regulators will fetch this information and they will monitor the air quality data for different organizations. So this makes the work of the organization much easier using this platform, so that their manual intervention is reduced and they can automate this feature in a easy and applicable approach. Okay. So I heard someone was also telling that you want to see the limits-based approach, how we want to see. So this factor of diesel, we brought it in a direct approach because there is no limit factor for it. Let's say if you are taking some factor of oil and grease or something, there are, as per the regulation, we have limits categorization. So in the SAP, we have that limit. So if I look at this particular data, you can see there is an upper limit value. Okay. So based on these limits, you can see wherever the limits are exceeding, you have those values in red indicator. Wherever that is within my limits, you have those values in green indicator. So whenever these limits are exceedance, the data will go into my exceedance data. Okay, so there are parameters, there are tiles where you can see this exceedance factor is there. And from there, you can report a deviation or take the corrective preventive actions. Okay. So with this being said, the SAP gives you the holistic overall platform where you can see all this data collection, calculation, the emission factors, the equivalent emission factors, the limit setup. So all those things are part and parcel of the system, This can be leveraged as per your industry requirements, as per your local regulatory requirements. And you can leverage the same framework, same platform which you are having, and configure it as per your business requirement. And the next is like how this data is getting into representative dashboard. I let Yogesh share the screen, and you can see how this data from the collected and calculated data, how you are seeing it in an analytics platform.
Or if you wanted to unshare.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, so whatever Arun showcased into the system can be run into or can be drawn into some meaningful dashboards and reports like this. So it gives me an yearly greenhouse gas emissions. It tells me the top 5 location where the emission is maximum, the top 5 location where my reduction plan or where the reduction in the emission has been working efficiently, my monthly emission on a monthly basis for a particular location at a particular site. And I can do this, draw this graph for various countries being a global organization. Now for another customer, again, these are all dashboards. Some of them have taken from some customer data. Again, some of the data is not the real data. So this is a viewpoint in which we are trying to give one view of all my parameters specific to electricity, hazard, water, and the natural gas usage in one view. Again, this can be, as I said, it can be done for a plant level. It can go to a division level, or it can go to an overall organization level. So there are multiple filters which we can create. This is all representation of data. Once you have loaded the data into a framework, into a skeleton, which Arun has showcased to yourself, these kind of dashboards can be easily customized to your specific requirements and your specific needs. So from a solution perspective, I know that we are pretty much over the time. So this is what we wanted to talk about from the solution perspective. I think one slide about ourselves, and then we will close this session. So Guna, you wanted to take a quick minute here?
Sure. Thank you, Yogesh. So team, it's very much imperative that in any organization's sustainability journey, we have to consider all the 3 facets: people, planets, and products. So with YASH, SAP firmly relies that on the environmental compliance supporting planets, and they have a strong presence also with relevance to product safety and product compliance areas with their solution suites. So they do have pre-built packages like Safety One, Safe Work, and the EM Plus package they have launched now to enable you a fast-track journey for sustainability. And they have a clear business cases and POCs that can firmly enable you to comply to various use case scenarios that your industries have. And you can see from the pop-up of number of customers they have, which is evident that what they're capable of. So with that, one key message I would like to convey here is, what next or why now we need to go forward in taking up an action. So currently we had seen a lot of regulatory and body regulatory relevant as well as corporation relevant push that's happening, which Anita and Yogesh also pointed out. So a lot of this pressure has to be handled immediately, and it's not going to be an easy task if you don't start now. So we need to have a clear short-term and long-term target set in order to progress towards this. And in order to have the reporting requirements performed, we need to have a clearly identified science-based target and what we can conceptualize as an organization to meet some of the public disclosures and compliance requirements like be it CDP, GRI, any kind of reporting needs. We need to have a clear-cut framework for that. So in order to have this foundation laid out from operationalizing sustainability to reporting sustainability, we have solution sets that offer and cater to wide needs around this. And with EM Plus being one package which helps in the data collection, data calculation, and reporting aspect, it firmly embeds into sustainability control tower, which Anita was emphasizing. So this is our next new age solution in cloud that has capabilities to meet a lot of ESG reporting requirements across different contents package areas. So currently we have the WEF metrics inbuilt as part of it, and we are also looking at other PET players like GRI and other SASP relevant standards being brought into this. So we have a strong ambition and aspiration to integrate the environment management package into sustainability control in the near future. And soon you will have an announcement from us as a package solution which offers that as well. So I would like you to really consider, operationalizing your sustainability and also reporting it through our both of these solutions. So EM will help you operationalize it, and sustainability control tower will help report it and continually monitor your progress and also forecast your predictions for meeting your new net zero targets. So that's all from our end, and we are now open to the floor for any questions that we can take upon some of these packages that we discussed and some of the solutions that we offered. Before that, any concluding remarks from anyone in the panel? Anita, Arun, Yogesh, do you want to add something on to us concluding remarks?
I mentioned that with those global changes happening around, there is no better time than to start now. And this is not something which you will start tomorrow and will be able to finish it. This is an ongoing journey with those short-term goals and long-term goals in place. We definitely need to plan, track, and monitor the progress to accomplish those goals. Some of those goals are as long as next 15, 20, 30 years, but 30 years goals are being built and being acted upon now, because this transformation will take time. So I will say that let's get started on this. If you haven't done so far, I'm sure that many of you will already be on this journey of defining these goals and taking it forward towards the accomplishments.
Excellent. Now I think we are open to take up any questions. Please feel free to ask any questions through the chat window, and we can take up. Of course, we have already been engaging actively in the chat window, but if there are any other specific questions you'd like to address, please do feel free to enter it.
Is there somebody who would like to ask any specific question? I can read.
Okay, I think we have self-clarified some of the key questions that were already raised in the areas of sustainability standards and how the calculation can happen automatically. So I think we are good. So let me see. Yeah. Thank you, Anita. Thanks for joining us today. So, all right. I think eventually, if you have any questions and if you'd like to see how you can collaborate and take up the journey with SAP and YASH together towards your solution roadmap, feel free to reach out to us. So we have our colleagues here at YASH to help you at this mail ID that you can see flashed on the screen. Please feel free to reach out with any other open questions or for any future collaborations. We'll be glad to help you out. And thanks again for taking out the time to be there in this webinar today and being a very active audience with a lot of questions and keeping us engaged, and looking forward to collaborate with you in the near future. Thank you all and have a nice day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Guna, for leading this webinar from the front. Anita, for your valued participation, and all the participants and attendees who have been with us all through. Appreciate and looking forward to engage and embark on this journey of sustainability together. Thank you.
Thank you, Guna. Thanks, Yogesh. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.